Well, it's great to be here this evening. You know, I think when we talk about development, it's really important to be in the places where development is happening. And Kibera, I think, is one of the most exciting places where development is really going in such a positive direction for so many reasons. But when I thought a little bit about what I've learned about Kibera in the last 8 or 9 years since we've been at this foundation work, one thing keeps coming back to me, and that is the government map that represents Kibera. When you look at the government map of Nairobi, Kibera is often represented as a blank spot. So this brings me to a larger point, which is maps. And why are maps so important for the world? This point was really brought home to me when we first started the foundation work. 12 years ago, I was in a remote Himalayan village in a northern state in India, and I was hiking in with a healthcare worker into a village. And as we got closer to the village and we started to meet the women in the village, the healthcare worker said, "I would like you to see the most important tool that I have." And she started to unzip her backpack. And I thought, well, she was going to bring out some great new family planning tool or some soap or a clean birth kit. And what she had was a very large piece of butcher paper. And as she started to unfold it, there was this great energy from the women in the community. And what they wanted to explain to me was how they had put every single household in their village on that map. They knew exactly how many children were in each of those households. They knew what the family's plan was for their reproductive plan and what tools were being used in that household for reproduction. And they wanted to talk to me about the natural resources around their village. And I don't think even at the time it struck me how important that tool was for those women. And I think it's been many years till I've actually come to understand it. When you map yourself as a community, you put yourself on a map to then be able to plan as a community, to come up with solutions and to advocate for yourselves. If you think about maps throughout time, even when the explorers went out to explore the world, what was the first thing they did? They mapped the place they were in. It gave them a sense of their surroundings and where they were in the world. Now, I saw this in another really powerful way last year in a very remote rural village in Malawi. Again, the village had come together. They knew that they were saving newborns' lives and mothers' lives by getting the mothers to these remote healthcare clinics to birth their babies. But the village also knew they weren't doing a good enough job. So they came together under a tree, and I happened to be there that day, as they started to plan their solutions and figure out what was wrong. And again, they took out a big piece of white paper, laid it down in the dirt, and started to map their village. And as they started to think about what was wrong in their village, they realized that the time of year that they were least likely to get the women to clinic was when the rainy season, when the river would swell. They couldn't cross the river to get the women to the remote healthcare facility. And so they realized they needed to come together to do some planning, to actually build a bridge in the next year across that river. When I think about what's going on in all of these settings, and then you come back here to Kibera, and you hear about the new amazing geographical tools that are being used in this community for you all to map yourselves, and what it's doing for the community. You know, when I came here over 7 years ago, the census estimate for Kibera slum was over 1 million people. And yet, now, we're saying there's probably about 200,000, 300,000 people in Kibera. It's important to know how many people live in your community, because then you can begin to ask the hard questions, right? Well, where are the schools? Where are the water resources? Where are we lacking water resources? Where are the electricity resources? And you can come together as a community to start to advocate for yourselves to the government, which you are doing in a very powerful way, saying these are the dark spots in our community and we need to do something about it. This is where garbage collection is not happening, or garbage is being dumped right by our homes. And in terms of the Railway Resettlement Act, you have incredible power by knowing exactly where that railway goes through the homes in Kibera. So when I think about an event like TEDx, and I think about the importance of map making and storytelling, to me they go hand in hand. Because if we can understand one another's stories, we begin to have wisdom. And we begin to empathize with one another. And I think in my culture we say, with understanding comes wisdom. And so when I think of the world, the future that I'd like to see TEDx and others create, It's by telling our stories and all being on one map together. Thank you.